Once upon a time, in the bustling town of Arindale, there lived a woman of unparalleled beauty and mystery. Her name was Elara. The moment she walked through the streets, her presence captivated all who were near. She was not from any known family, nor was there any story to tell about her past. She had no origin, no history, and no roots that could be traced. She was simply Elara. Her skin shimmered with the brilliance of moonlight. Her long hair cascaded like a river of silk, and her eyes sparkled like the first stars of the evening. But it wasn't just her ethereal beauty that held the town in its thrall. No, it was something more, a presence that emanated from the delicate waist beads she wore around her waist. With every step she took, the beads jingled softly, and the sound carried in the wind like a hypnotic melody. It was a sound so sweet and so alluring that the men who heard it couldn't help but pause, entranced by its charm. The people of Arindale whispered about her in the shadows. They asked questions about who she was, where she came from, and why she had no family. But no one had answers. Elara moved through the town like a breeze, never staying in one place for long. She spent her days walking through the marketplace, her waist beads chiming gently, captivating the hearts and minds of every man who crossed her path. She was mysterious, and in her silence, she held an undeniable power. The men of Arindale, strong men, wealthy men, influential men, could not resist her allure. They followed her with their eyes, each one desiring to be the one to win her favor. Some spent their fortunes on extravagant gifts, golden jewelry, expensive silks, rare perfumes, hoping that she would notice them. Others, more daring, tried to speak with her, to offer their hearts, their devotion. But Elara never seemed to take notice. She would smile at them, yes, but it was a smile that held no warmth. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she wanted and what she didn't. There was one rule that Elara had, one simple rule that no man could ever break. It was the rule that set her apart from all the women who came before her. She would never let anyone touch her waist beads. It was hers, and hers alone. She made it clear that no man would ever be allowed to remove it, no matter how much they begged, no matter how much they desired her. The men of Arindale, captivated by her beauty, didn't understand why they couldn't have what they wanted. But they quickly learned that Elara was not like any woman they had ever known. She was not to be possessed. And yet, they were drawn to her with a force they could not explain. The first man to fall victim to a spell was Jorin, the most powerful merchant in Arindale. Jorin had built his fortune from nothing. His ships sailed to distant lands, bringing back exotic spices, fine silks, and precious jewels. He was a man who had everything: wealth, influence, and the kingdom at his feet. But when he saw Elara for the first time, none of that mattered. Her waist beads jingled as she passed by his stall, and in that moment, Jorin's world stopped. He was mesmerized by her, by the soft music that seemed to play whenever she walked, by the grace with which she moved. Jorin had never felt this way before. He had known women, beautiful women, powerful women, but none like Elara. He had to have her. He sent her gifts, golden necklaces, pearls from the sea, rare perfumes from the east, but Elara refused every gift. She didn't even look at them, much to Jorin's frustration. Jorin could not eat. He could not sleep. His thoughts were consumed by her. The image of her waist beads with its jingling melody haunted his every waking moment. He became obsessed with her, and he knew that he had to do something to win her favor. One evening, He found himself standing in front of her house, the same delicate, enchanting sound filling the air as she walked toward him. "Elara," he said, his voice trembling, "I will give you anything you want. I will offer you my wealth, my power, my ships. Just be mine." Elara stopped, her gaze lingering on him, her lips curling into a soft smile. Her eyes, though, remained distant, unreadable. "Anything, Jorin?" she asked, her voice like silk. Jorin nodded eagerly. "Anything, Elara. I will do whatever it takes." Elara reached out and placed a hand on his. Her touch was soft, almost ethereal. "Then take me home," she whispered, her voice as sweet as honey. Without another word, Jorin led her to his mansion, a grand, opulent building that stood as a symbol of his success. That night, they lay together. The moonlight filtered in through the grand windows, bathing the room in a soft, silvery glow. But as Jorin reached for her waist beads, something strange happened. He felt a sudden chill run through his fingers, as if the beads themselves were alive. They were cool to the touch, smooth, and yet pulsed with an energy that was foreign to him. "Take it off," Jorin whispered, his voice thick with desire. "Let me see you completely." "No," Elara replied softly, her voice firm. "It makes me sweeter, Jorin, more irresistible." Jorin, consumed by his desire, didn't question her. He pulled her closer, and they became lost in their passion. But little did Jorin know this would be the last night he would ever sleep in that mansion. The next morning, disaster struck. Jorin's fleet, the one that had brought him his wealth, caught fire. The flames roared like an angry beast, consuming everything in its path: his gold, his jewels, his silks. By evening, his empire had been reduced to ash. Jorin stood before the ruins of his once great business, his mind blank. His hands shook. How could this have happened? But the misfortune didn't stop there. That night, a terrible storm descended on Arindale. The winds howled like vengeful spirits, and lightning cracked the sky. By morning, Jorin's grand mansion, the symbol of his wealth, had collapsed under the weight of the storm. It was as if the heavens themselves were punishing him for his greed. Within days, Jorin lost everything. His wife, unable to bear the shame of their fall from grace, left him, taking their children with her. Jorin, once the most powerful man in Arindale, was now a beggar, seen sitting in the marketplace with dust on his clothes, his hands stretched out, begging for food. The people of Arindale shook their heads. How had this happened? The once proud merchant was now a shadow of his former self. And as Jorin sat in the marketplace, broken and lost, Elara walked past him once more. Her waist beads jingled softly, and the men who saw her stopped in their tracks. They, too, became entranced by her presence, and like Jorin before them, they, too, were unknowingly walking toward their own destruction. It wasn't long before another powerful man, King Alden, laid his eyes on Elara. King Alden was feared across the land. He was a man of great strength, commanding armies that conquered entire kingdoms. He had everything: a kingdom, wealth, and influence. Yet when he saw Elara, something in him stirred, something he had never felt before. She walked into the grand hall of his palace, her waist beads jingling as she moved. The air shifted. The music slowed. The king's eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. His heart raced. His pulse quickened. "Who is she?" he demanded. "She is Elara, my king," his servant replied. "She has no family, no past, but every man in Arindale desires her." King Alden stroked his beard, his mind working quickly. "Then I must have her," he declared. That evening, his messengers went to Elara, bringing with them gifts, gold, fine silks, jewels from distant lands. But Elara didn't even look at the gifts. She only smiled and said, "Tell your king, if he wants me, he must come himself." No woman had ever spoken to King Alden in such a way. His eyes flashed with anger at first, but as he processed her words, something else took over. Desire, power, hunger. And so, that night, the king himself walked through the gates of Elara's home, unaware that by seeking her, he was about to make the greatest mistake of his life.